Let's get started with our first news. Justin Gaethje wanted to fight Arman Tsarukyan or Charles Oliveira at UFC 313. Gaethje is set to throw down with Rafael Fiziev in a highly anticipated rematch at UFC 313, but according to him, after Dan Hooker pulled out of their scheduled fight, he was hoping to either fight Arman Tsarukyan or run things back with Charles Oliveira. Gaethje caught up with Pav Verbeek for Polsat Sport and spoke about the UFC's decision. Gaethje revealed, "I never heard Gamrot. I think, the UFC was trying to find a replacement for Dan Hooker, but they never considered Gamrot. That would have been a very different fight, but for me, off the top of my head, the two guys that made the most sense were Oliveira and Tsarukyan, because those are the guys ranked ahead of me. They're the number 1 and number 2 contenders, and if I get a win over them, I go exactly where I want to go, fighting Islam Makhachev." He also mentioned that while the UFC explored options, he had no choice but to say yes to whoever was offered. "This is a big business. I'm the number 3 guy in the world, so I had to rely on my coach and my manager to make the right decision for me." Gaethje also talked about the short notice rematch with Fiziev, which has been booked for 3 rounds since Fiziev is stepping in on short notice. He expects an exciting fight, saying, "Absolutely, he's world class on his feet. His striking is dangerous, so I need to be on point. I think it's going to be an exciting fight. I think I'm going to get another bonus. And I think, after coming off a loss and blowing his knee out in the Gamrot fight, he's as hungry as ever. He's going to be very dangerous." While the UFC already has Gaethje versus Fiziev booked, Charles Oliveira, who is currently traveling with his family, made it clear that the UFC could have called him. Posting on social media, he wrote, "I'm just a phone call away, Dana White, Sean Shelby." If Gaethje wins next weekend, he has his sights set on fighting Islam Makhachev. When speaking to Jim Rome, he explained that timing is everything in the UFC, and a win over Fiziev could position him for a title shot. Timing is everything in this sport. We saw it with Dustin Poirier. I beat him, and he still got a title shot right after that. So, if I go in there and get a finish, put on an outstanding performance like I always do, I think I'll be one of the guys they consider for a fight with Makhachev. Would you be interested in seeing a Justin Gaethje versus Islam Makhachev title fight? Makhachev has expressed interest in the fight before, so this could be a real possibility. Moving on to our second news, Michael Chandler sends a warning to Paddy Pimblett. After suffering back-to-back losses to Dustin Poirier and Charles Oliveira, Chandler is fired up and ready to take out all his frustration on Paddy Pimblett at UFC 314. This fight is one of the most talked about matchups on the card, and Chandler is making it very clear that he is coming to make a statement. During an interview with MMA Fighting's Damon Martin this week, Chandler reflected on his last fight against Oliveira, admitting that while he doesn't like to make excuses, he knows exactly what went wrong. That loss, according to him, still stings, and because of that, he had a warning for Pimblett ahead of their upcoming showdown in April. "I've got to take it out on Paddy Pimblett. Somebody was going to get it taken out on their face, on their body, and on their soul. That loss to Oliveira was painful, man. It was a tough one." Chandler made it clear that this fight is personal. He's not just looking for a win, he's looking for domination and a finish. He also revealed just how devastating that loss to Oliveira was for him, saying that it was such a tough defeat that he even questioned his future in the sport. In the aftermath of that fight, Chandler admitted to his wife that he wasn't sure if he would ever fight again. That's how much the loss affected him, and for a fighter as explosive and passionate as Chandler, that's saying a lot. But now, the story is different. His fire is back, and he's stepping into the octagon at UFC 314 with a mission. A fight with Paddy Pimblett, a young and hungry up-and-comer, is exactly what he needs to prove a point and remind the world why he's one of the most dangerous lightweights in the UFC. Chandler knows that Pimblett has been gaining hype, but he's not buying into it. He believes that Paddy hasn't faced a challenge like him yet, and when they step into the cage, he's planning to teach him a lesson. With fire in his heart and revenge on his mind, Chandler is looking to get back in the win column in a big way. Will he get it done, or will Pimblett pull off the upset? Let us know what you think. Meanwhile, Dana White and the UFC are facing backlash for cutting a fighter on a 2-fight winning streak. The UFC is under fire after announcing the release of bantamweight fighter Taylor Lapilus. The decision has left fans outraged, especially considering that Lapilus has posted a 3-1 record since returning to the UFC in 2023 and is currently riding a 2-fight winning streak. Lapilus secured a unanimous decision victory over Cody Stamann in June and followed it up with another dominant performance against Vince Morales in September. With momentum on his side, many believed Lapilus was on his way to climbing the rankings, making his release all the more shocking. Despite his recent success, the UFC decided to cut him, a move that has sparked major controversy. Many speculate that Lapilus was released because his fighting style isn't the most entertaining, rather than for any lack of skill or wins. This isn't the first time Lapilus has been cut under questionable circumstances. During his first UFC run, he put together a 3-1 record but was still released even though he was coming off a win. Fans are not happy. Many believe this is another sign that the UFC is prioritizing entertainment over sport, a growing concern in the MMA community. One outraged fan reacted saying, "They cut a good fighter on a 2-win streak because he's boring. Soon enough, they'll start doing ladder matches. They care more about entertainment than sport." Another fan didn't hold back, writing, "Disgusting and inexcusable decision, letting actually good fighters go to replace them with cheap labor. The UFC will never be a serious sport until these executives are gone." Others pointed out the double standard, comparing Lapilus's release to fighters like Sam Alvey, who was given multiple chances despite going 0-8-1 in his final 9 UFC fights before finally being cut. One user wrote, "UFC hates him. He's boring for sure, but it stinks to get cut while being 3-1. I don't support it, especially when we had Sam Alvey go 0-8-1 and still stick around." At the end of the day, it's clear that many die-hard UFC fans feel that Lapilus's release is unfair. Was this the right move by the UFC, or did they drop the ball on a legitimate talent? What do you think? Let us know in the comments. In other news, Dana White was forced to cancel a UFC fight at the last minute. According to reports, this weekend's card took a major hit as a fight was canceled during weigh-ins. Luana Carolina was set to face Montana De La Rosa, but the fight was called off after Carolina failed to make weight. The reason? Weight management issues. This isn't just bad luck. This is becoming a pattern. Carolina has now missed weight 3 times in the UFC. The first time was back in 2021 when she came in 2.2 pounds over the limit for her fight against Poliana Botelho. Then last year she did it again, missing weight by a shocking 3 pounds ahead of her fight against Juliana Stolarenko. Now here we are again, another fight scrapped because Carolina can't make weight. This raises a big question. Will the UFC cut her for this? The UFC has zero tolerance for fighters who repeatedly miss weight 3 times. That's a serious problem. It's not just about discipline. Fighters who come in heavy have an unfair advantage, which is why weight classes exist. Missing weight isn't just a bad look, it's unprofessional, and it ruins fights that fans have been looking forward to. What now? Will the UFC give her another chance? Or will Dana White say enough is enough and cut her from the roster? Fans are split on the issue. Some believe she should be gone immediately, arguing that fighters who can't make weight consistently shouldn't be in the biggest MMA promotion in the world. Others think that one more chance might be fair, especially if she moves up a weight class to avoid future issues. One fan wrote, "Come on UFC, 3 times? Cut her already. This is unprofessional." Another had a different take. "She's talented, but maybe she needs to fight at a higher weight. Some people just can't make the cut safely." At this point, it's unclear what the UFC will do, but one thing is for sure. Missing weight this many times is a big problem. So what do you think? Should the UFC cut her, or does she deserve another chance? Let us know in the comments. And finally, Conor McGregor reveals a shocking UFC payday. Once again, the Notorious is making headlines, and this time, it's not about his next fight, it's about his massive payday. McGregor just claimed that he made more money in his last UFC fight than the entire Bivol vs Beterbiev card combined. That's right, more than $32 million. McGregor responded to a tweet showing the total payouts from the highly anticipated light heavyweight boxing clash between Dmitry Bivol and Artur Beterbiev. The combined purse for the entire event was reportedly over $32 million, but McGregor wasn't impressed. He fired back, saying, "If accurate, I made more than this entire card in my last UFC fight in 2021. And let's not forget, 2021 wasn't even his biggest year. McGregor went on to remind fans that he's not just a fighter, he's a massive draw, someone who sets records every time he steps into the octagon. He proudly stated that his last UFC fight generated record gate numbers and record pay-per-views. Now, here's the big question. Do you believe him? We all know McGregor has been the highest paid UFC fighter in history, and his fights have consistently been blockbuster events. But is it really possible that he made more than an entire boxing card filled with elite fighters? Some fans absolutely believe it. After all, McGregor has been part of some of the biggest UFC events ever, including his fights against Khabib Nurmagomedov and Dustin Poirier. Others, however, are skeptical, arguing that even though McGregor makes a lot of money, boxing paydays tend to be bigger. One fan commented, "McGregor is the UFC's biggest star, but no way he made more than an entire boxing event featuring top champions." Another fired back, "It's McGregor. He gets a cut of the pay-per-views, ticket sales, and sponsorships. Of course he made more." Whether you believe McGregor or not, one thing is clear, he knows how to stay in the spotlight. So what do you think? Did Conor really make more than $32 million for his last UFC fight, or is this just another one of his bold claims? Let us know in the comments.